let's dive into the keys to victory, Ryan, and we're going to begin with the offense. And really, for the offense, there's givens every week, right? The offensive line has to play well. That's a given every single week. Don't turn the ball over. This is an offense that cannot thrive without some level of efficiency and ball security. We've seen it. They just don't have. At least they have not shown the ability to have the firepower, the big playability to go out there and overcome mistakes regularly. So this is a team that clearly those are keys. The offensive line has to play well. Those are things that we're not going to focus on every week. There's only one key that we're going to focus on every single week, and that's key number one of this game, and that is start fast. And it's a different reason every week. And this week, it's twofold. The number one is the obvious one, put BC away. This is not a very good offense. Put them behind the eight ball a little bit. Let your defense kind of pin their ears back and go after them. Make them even more pass game oriented they want to be. And that's obviously part of it. But then the second part of it is this offense, I would argue more than ever after the way that the second half played out and listening to Drew Pine talk after the game, that was a kid that to me was searching for answers and didn't have any. And so he needs to be able to come out. This offense needs to be able to come out and have some level of success early. Doesn't mean Drew's got to go 8 of 10 on the first 3 drives and, throw for 250 yards. But if he throws 3 passes in the first quarter, he needs to hit them. They need to have some success with him, right? You need to be able to come out and get the ground game back going again, build that confidence back up. So I think that's a key. With the way that how bad last quarter, you need to put that stink behind you as quickly as possible and just come out against BC and roll. If this comes out and all of a sudden they struggle early, it's going to snowball and it's going to allow BC then to establish its confidence saying, hey, we can do this. We can pull off this upset. We've seen this BC team. If you let them stay in the game early, they start thinking, hey, we can do this. You saw it against NC State. You saw it against Louisville. You've seen it in games. You've got to put them away early, Ryan. You got to take away their soul early, because the longer you let them hang around, then doubt builds on your side, confidence builds on your side, and all of a sudden we're sitting here with 2020 Notre Dame Louisville. And that's not a place that you want to be with this football team that has, a Zay Flowers, Jalen Gill, George Takis, and whether it's Phil Dracovic or Graham Moorhead, you don't want to be there in that type of situation, Ryan. So start fast is key number one for the offense.
Momentum is a funny thing sometimes, Brian. You talked about it, right? It's like first half, you have all the momentum. Second half rolls along against Navy, and then all your momentum just is squashed, and you can't get it back for the rest of the football game. And I think that is the key thing that you just talked about, is that Notre Dame has the opportunity to get that momentum back that they lost in that second half. They have the opportunity to grasp it and then take it for a full game. You want to talk about playing 60 minutes, like grab the momentum early and use it for the entirety of a football game, and don't leave any doubts. I think not leaving doubt is a big thing for me, because like you said, it's easy when things aren't going well to put your head down and just feel sorry for yourself. It's a very easy thing, right? And we saw the offense have no answers in the second half. Well, quickly, this coaching staff and these players need to capture some sort of momentum early on this game, and they need to feel success again, because we have seen it. During the last few games especially, there have been moments where in every facet of the game offensively, there has been some signs of growth and there's been some signs of a lot of success. And Notre Dame knows what they need to do in order to be successful. But the thing that needs to happen is, first, coaches need to put them in proper position. Sure. We agree that for the most part, the last few games, offensive play calling has been a lot better. Like, there's no doubt about that. Then the next thing is we need someone to just look at it and just go, man, I got to make a play, right? Like, there was nobody last week that was in the second half was like, I'm going to flip the momentum here and I am just going to make a play. Someone has to do it this week early, capture that momentum, flip the switch, get all the energy on your side, and ride this one, man, because it's going to be a weird game, like with the weather conditions and it being senior day. And it's going to be a little bit of a strange football game. There's some like outlier things that are happening in this game, which makes it unique. But Notre Dame has an opportunity because you're right. Every week it's different. Why Notre Dame needs to start fast. Number one, I think that they need to recapture the momentum that was on their side for the better part of the last few games until the second half last week. And against a Boston College team that has been incredibly one-dimensional offensively, not able to run the football, getting them behind and making them feel uncomfortable where they don't even try to run the football, where they know they only have one dimension that they can even rely on, not even trying to get the second dimension in the game. Offensive line that is not very good. You want to be able to really let the dogs loose on those guys, right? I want to see Isaiah Foskey have some one-on-one pass rush reps against these offensive tackles. I want to see Jason Adamalola take on this interior offensive line and have a big opportunity. These are things that we need to see in this game, without a doubt.
Key number 2, Ryan, is the pass game. And look, yes, I think they need to figure out a way to hit a shot or two. I do. I think they have to find a way to, especially on the outside. Look, here's what BC's going to do. They're going to come up and play cover 1 and cover 3. And they're going to put 8 in the box. We've seen them do it. Every time they've played a team that's run game oriented, we saw them do it early against Clemson because they didn't fear Clemson's vertical passing game. We saw them do it against UConn, who's more of a run-oriented team. We've seen them do that a lot this year. When they're playing teams that are run-oriented, they're going to put 8 in the box. They're going to bring a safety down, and they're going to go 8 in the box. Why would you not do that for Notre Dame when you do that for everybody else? A team that's how many games has Notre Dame played this year where they've had like less than 120 passing yards in a game? So you're going to see them do that. You're going to see one-on-one shots outside. I know that Tommy Rees likes to draw up plays, and in a lot of ways, these things are getting people open. Okay, but the reality is sometimes, especially for a quarterback who's struggling mentally, it's okay to just say, you see a one-on-one, take your 3-step drop, look the safety off this way, and throw the go to Braden, or throw the go to Tobias, or throw the go to Lorenzo, or throw the go to Dion, or I don't care, right? Get either one of your tall guys, your fast guys on the outside to the field and just say, dude, just throw it up, and because their field corners aren't big. You can beat them deep. Clemson was beating them deep. Clemson was beating them deep constantly in that game. And, with all due respect, Clemson's receivers don't have the speed that Notre Dame's receivers have. I know that may sound crazy because Notre Dame throw the ball, but that's not the issue. It's not that. So just catch it, hit your drop, and just freaking throw it out there. It doesn't require you to read this, that, or the other thing. Just get it out there. That's on Tommy Rees to teach it, Tommy Rees to call it, and Tommy Rees to make sure that Drew Pine knows there is no read. If you see a single high safety and we call verts or we call this play, this is where you're going with the football. Look the guy off and throw it. So that's part of the pass game too. But the other big part of this, Ryan, is that's a couple shots a game. You're not going to you're not going to throw 20 of those. The bigger part of this, because of the snow, because of the cold, because of the wind, you're going to have some of those shots when the wind is on your back. But to really thrive in the pass game, to protect the run game with your throwing game, they need to do two other things. One we'll get to here in a second when we talk more about the run game, but the other one is a really creative and multiple running back and tight end pass game. I want to see Mitchell Evans catch the ball this week on some sort of play action pop pass. Now, if you can throw it to Michael Mayer, that's fine. I have a feeling BC is going to be keyed on Michael Mayer. Okay, so use that to your advantage. It's okay to give Michael Mayer his touches. I'm not saying come up with a pass game that doesn't include Michael Mayer. He's your best dude. He should be the focal point of your offense. But there's some other things you can steal in this game that are going to really help you. A pop pass to Mitchell Evans, a wheel route away from Mayer where you look off and then come back, to Mitchell Evans, or put Kane Barong in, or Holden Stace, or whoever else. You've got some talented weapons there. Freaking use them. If you're going to use 12 personnel all freaking game, use all of your personnel in the pass game. And then the other thing is get back to using the running backs more in the pass game. And fine, you don't want to screen it. That's okay. We've seen Drew Pine hit how many angle routes this year? We've seen him get Chris Tyree in the perimeter. There is no weather condition, in my opinion, that we're going to see on Saturday that limits your ability to throw a now screen to Chris Tyree. Every single team that we have seen Notre Dame play and use 21 effectively has overreacted to Chris Tyree going on the perimeter. Every single one. And so use that. And if BC doesn't want to stretch out and get an extra defender out of the box to defend your 21 personnel with Chris Tyree, guess what? You throw it to him and he's going to hurt you. If they do then get out, guess what? That's one less freaking guy in the box to hand the ball off to your running backs. It's not that hard. It worked against Cal. It worked against North Carolina. They went away from it for however many games. They brought it back against Clemson, and it worked like a charm. And that is something that you can use a heavy dose of against this BC team that lacks speed pretty much everywhere and is going to want to load the box. You can steal easy yards if you are willing to do that. Will they do that? I highly doubt it, but it needs to be done. And if they do, it's something that can be a big part of this game, along with other things that allow you to get your running backs and your tight ends heavily involved in the pass game. That's something that should and could work. Whether it works, and then specific to BC, it should really work.
Brian, I'm going to be completely honest here. This is something that I'm very scared of, is that Notre Dame might see the weather conditions on Saturday, and they might say, nope, it's just going to be a duo day, man. Like, we're just going to run down Boston College's throat, and we're not going to have any diversity as far as our run to pass game in this football game. I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think it's how it should be, but I do have a deep worry that that is going to happen, because I just think that there's a lack of trust to be in a completely balanced football team, run to pass. And I really hope, because to your point, there are things to take advantage of for this Boston College team defensively. They have pretty good linebackers, or at least a couple talented linebackers, but they are very easily manipulated. That middle of the field is going to be open in a lot of instances. So using the running backs, using the tight ends, that is going to be a great opportunity in this football game. And the state, I like a couple of the corners that they have, the Josh DeBerrys of the world, the Elijah Joneses of the world, but they don't really have great safety play per se.
And look, Ryan, Josh DeBerry is a nice player, but I watched Joseph Ngata just torch him by 5 yards for a touchdown. Joseph Ngata. Right? So I'm going to say Joseph Ngata torched him for a touchdown. Right? I mean, no, that's not a guy you should be afraid to go. And I'm not saying you're saying that. That's not it. It's just watching this. It's so freaking frustrating, Ryan, knowing that, like, you should be exposing these teams. Well, our quarterback's not very good, but neither are their DBs. So go after them. But I think you're right, Ryan. I have this bad feeling that this is just going to be an excuse to run duo 87,000 times in this game. And you don't get any better as a football. You get the win. You're 8-3, but you don't get any better as a football team. And that's my concern.
I really have I'm just terrified that we're going to see nothing but 12 and 13 personnel during this game, Brian. And they're just going to say, we're just going to run it down your throat, and we're not going to be diverse. We're not going to let our wide receivers have a chance. We're not going to push the tempo as far as how we're attacking a defense vertically. Like, there's I have a deep fear about that, because to your point, going against USC, right? You can't play that brand of football and win that football game. It's going to be a lot harder to do that. I know some people are going to say, well, you did it against Clemson and won. Yes, you're right, but USC is a different animal when you're talking about that. You're going to have to score with that.
We said during that game that Clemson's offense isn't that good. Exactly. And that's something we said going into that game. You could get away with that to a degree on a windy night. Clemson was hampered a bit by the conditions. That's not going to be the case out in Los Angeles next weekend.
It's not.
And it's a much better offense. Much better offense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're comparing a team that averages, I don't even have the USC numbers in front of me, but I'm going to assume they average somewhere near 40 points. And then we're talking about a Boston College team that averages 19 point something, right? Like, it's very
42.4.
Yeah. So it's a very, very different situation here, right? Two very different football teams. Weather conditions are going to be very different comparative to those football games. And in order for you to finish the season off to your highest level, you're going to need to have some form of balance. And balance does not mean 25 runs, 25 passes. It's not what that means. What it means, though, is that you have been a heavily reliant running team, which is fine. That's how you win. I get it. But at some point, teams, like we saw last week, are going to say, your running game is not going to be the reason you dominate us today. Right. Now, luckily for Nate in the Navy game, Notre Dame's just a better, more talented team than Navy.
Way
just
better.
Point blank.
And beat them by 3.
Exactly.
Beat them by
Exactly.
3.
And the reason that it was close and that they mounted a comeback is because you could not find any diversity offensively, and you couldn't take advantage of what Navy was trying to do to you and hurt them in the weaknesses that they let go there. Right? We talked about if you would have just done more screen game, you would have done more running back play in the passing game last week, you probably would have had a lot more second half success. You unfortunately didn't. But now it's time to put that behind you and look at this game and say, there are opportunities in the passing game that we can take care of this. We can take advantage of this BC team. They have some talent on the second level. They have some talent in the secondary, but it's incredibly inconsistent. Yeah. Should be able to make some big plays in this football game.
I'm at the point now where I just want to yank my hair out. And look, I get it. Drew Pine's not playing well right now. But, I mean, at what point in time do you say, okay, you really haven't been able to coach any of your scholarship quarterbacks to the point where they can hit a 3-step fade? Like, really? You're telling me not one of them can do that? Not a one? You're telling me that you're watching yourself, scouting yourself, and you're looking how effective 21 personnel has been, run and pass game, and your thought is, nah, we're good. We're not going to do that anymore. I mean, it is maddening. And, like, look, here's you want to know why Clemson worked? Here's the reality of it. Clemson worked because Notre Dame has really good players. Clemson didn't give the Notre Dame players enough respect. Clemson thought they could come out in that game because of all the NFL dudes they have in their front seven and say, we're going to play our game against Notre Dame. And they're not, and they weren't good enough to do it. Navy, a lot of other teams they've played, Syracuse to a degree, tried this. Navy did it. BC is going to do it, and USC is going to do it. They're going to say, we're not good enough to just go play their game. We're not. We've got to do some stuff to create negatives. We've got to do some stuff to overload them with numbers and make them beat us on the football. Notre Dame showed they can't do that yet. They could do it for a half, not a full game, though. You just got to go into halftime within striking distance, make some adjustments, and their quarterback's going to collapse in the second half. We've seen that over and over and over. So those teams are not going to rely on their just do what they do the way Clemson did. That's why it worked against Clemson. Because Clemson underestimated Notre Dame's talent level. Navy did not. And that's why Navy completely shut Notre Dame's run game down. And so BC is not going to look at the Clemson game and look at the Navy game and say, you know what? I think we're going to be more like Clemson. We're just going to line up and be big and physical and just be gap sound. They're not going to do that because they know they're going to get destroyed. They're going to come out and say, we got to be aggressive. We're going to shoot our linebackers. We're going to bring edge pressures. We're going to bring corner fires. Why do I know they're going to do those things? Because they've done it on film. They see Notre Dame and realize Notre Dame doesn't have a plan to deal with that. And so that's what they're going to do. And what is Notre Dame going to do about it? 21 personnel would help that a lot. Moving your 12 and 13 personnel around and doing some different things. You know what would be awesome? Bring a corner fire and just have one of your tight ends leak out and just throw it over their head. There are things you can do to attack those things. You've got to have a plan for it. Yep. And if they don't, look, somebody asked this question, Ryan, this is kind of the point. Irish Shytown said, do you think that we'll be able to bully ball our way to win against BC? And my answer is yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They will be able to bully ball their way to a win over Boston College because Boston College isn't very good. They're really not a good football team. Their 3 wins this year, Maine, Louisville, NC State. They beat Maine somewhat convincingly, right? But they beat Louisville by a point and they beat NC State by a point. They're not very good. So, yes, they can go out there and bully ball their way into a win. But that's not making you a better football team. That's not putting you in position to go out there and handle your business next week against a USC team that scored. I was just looking at this, Ryan, and I was going to bring it up. USC, in its last 6 games, has scored 42, 30, 42, 45, 41, and 55 points. Now, none of those teams are as good as Notre Dame is on defense, but that's a big difference between, 42 and 17. You just can't assume that's going to be the case. And so if you're not able to do that, there's going to have problems. Now, if Tommy Rees can figure out a way to do this, then I'm going to be singing his praises to high heaven after the game. That's the thing. Right? Sure. I'm pessimistic now, preparing for the worst, hoping for the best is basically where I'm at right now, right? When it comes to that. And that sort of ties into number 3. We kind of already talked a little bit about part of the point 3, Ryan, which is they got to mix up the run game. That includes a scheme. Can't just be duo all day. Please, for the love of all things holy, this is a slow Boston College defense. Get the ball outside. Give me a jet sweep, right? I think the last time Notre Dame ran a jet sweep against Boston College and went for a 60-yard touchdown. The dude that did that, still on the roster. I'm just saying, right? Give me some stuff that slows down the BC defense. You know what would be great? I mean, look, sometimes you call plays that have some risk involved, right? And there's times you could run a reverse and all of a sudden they blitz right into it. But sometimes they blitz into it in the wrong time. Like there's a couple times if Notre Dame was handing a reverse off against Navy yesterday, as hard as they were crashing the backs, if they'd have been able to somehow pull that ball and get it outside some way, somehow, it would have gone. So be creative with it. Give me some outside run stuff, not just jet sweeps, but, give me a buck sweep. Give me something where you're going to pin and pull. I mean, Clemson had some success with that, right? Where they were UConn had success with that, where BC was loading the box and UConn just kind of pinned everybody down, pulled it outside, and they were out the gate. UConn did that. UConn did that, folks. UConn. Okay. So, again, mix up your run game, get back to being the creative formational team you were against Boston College. I don't know why they went away from that against Navy. Again, because I think it's Navy. We'll just be able to line up and do our thing. No, be creative all the time. Give the other team something to think about. And then RPO success. Drew Pine, I would have run 1 million RPOs in practice this week. They ran a bunch of them last week in the game and didn't have a lot of success with it because Drew pulled it and threw it when he shouldn't have, and then he handed it off when he should have pulled and threw it. Just needs more work, needs more reps. So that's something I'd focus on this week. Those are 3 things to me, Ryan, that you can really do to mix up your run game to allow you to still run the ball a ton against Boston College and have success to where you can be you and still win the game. But, beating Boston College 20-3 or 20-6 because they suck and you just ran duo a million times, that's a very unsatisfying win. That's results oriented, not process oriented. And this needs to be a process game where you're making yourself a better football team and you're positioning yourself to go into the final 2 games, USC and then whatever bowl game, with a chance to really end the season on a big note. That's important. This team needs it from a momentum standpoint. This team needs it from a confidence standpoint, and this team needs it from the standpoint of recruiting too, Ryan. It's a huge recruiting opportunity as well, and so that's why I feel as adamant as I do today about why they need to do what we're saying they need to do. Don't just go out there and think you're just – because even if you can and still win, so what? They suck. That doesn't make you a better football team, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, Brian, I feel like every game I've watched at Boston College, the second and third levels just get manipulated so easily, right? Like eye candy is just not the friend of Boston College. And the things that you're talking about, the diversity of the run game, getting outside, running some pin and pull stuff, running jet sweeps, doing the RPO game, all that stuff is about manipulating defenders, right? Like you're making them wrong. You're making them guess. And when you make guys guess, you'll see that a athletic Cam Arnold, for instance, Boston College's best linebacker, in my opinion, is going to guess wrong at times and is going to be in the wrong position. They're going to be in the wrong gap. He's going to be in the wrong situation from time to time. Those things happen to this defense constantly. You know what Boston College wants? Boston College wants you to run duo 1 million times so that they can run the same key every single play so that their eyes don't get manipulated. That's what they want. They want to trigger the same. They want to get downhill the same. They want to fill the similar gaps. Like that's what they want to do. And what we're asking for, and what we have been asking for several weeks, this is just the Boston College thing, but more diversity in the run game to manipulate defenders, make them be in the improper position, make them guess wrong. I want them to how do teams break off these big runs from time to time, right? It isn't always about your guys just being better than – sometimes it is, right? Offensive line, sometimes you block it perfectly, you gouge them, and there's a gap right up the middle, and you score a touchdown. Other times, it's because you just killed them with a jet sweep, and now the linebackers' eyes are all floated the jet sweep, and then you hit a counter right underneath of them or hit an inside zone right underneath of them, and then that's 6 because guys aren't in the right position. Creativity, being able to manipulate second and third level defenders, that's a big part of this football game. And everything that you're calling for, Brian, in my opinion, is about making it hard on defensive players. Don't make it easy. Make things look different, even if stuff is working off of one another. You don't have to be you don't have to run a million plays in order to get what you want to get out of this, right? In order to hit your goal, you just need to make defensive players uncomfortable in their own skin in this football game.
Last point, Ryan, and we'll be quick about this one because it doesn't need to be expressed a lot, and we've gone a little bit long on some of our other points. We got fired up. I love it. I like when we get fired up. 4 is easy. You need a great third quarter. I mean, that's the thing is you got to put this football team away. You've got to come out and show that, hey, look, we've put last week behind us. Games like that happen. We've seen it before. I've seen it from good teams. I've seen Ohio State have bad games against bad teams. Or bad halves against bad teams. I've seen Alabama have bad halves against bad teams. I've seen – and the reality is if you flip it and Notre Dame plays poorly in the first half and they're down 13-10 in the first quarter and then come out in the second half and just roll them off the field, guess what? We're having a different conversation about it, right? But the way that it happened, it's like we're just left with the stink of that. I mean, we'd still talk about the first half and how bad it was, but we'd say, hey, look, they went into halftime, they made adjustments, they came out, and bam, they were rocking and rolling. Instead, we're talking about how Notre Dame, Navy came out after the half, and you had zero answers for what they were doing. That's really problematic for me. Really problematic for me. So when you have a week to prepare, you can come up with some stuff that can beat Navy. When you have 15 minutes to adjust, they get you. That's a problem. And so I want to know that was a 1 week thing. It just was, because that happens. It's one of those weeks, right? I mean, there have been times in my coaching career, there have been times in, we saw it under Lou Holtz. We've seen it under every great coach. I'm not saying I'm a great coach. I'm just making the point, like I can sympathize where say, I thought this was going to work in the second half, but we didn't do a good job adjusting. We didn't do what we needed to do. I thought it was going to work. It didn't work. That's on me. That's on us. And it happens. And then you come out the next time and you make sure it doesn't happen again. As long as that's the case, Ryan, that's going to be another sign to me that this team has grown. They thought that they were going to be able to do some things last week. There was stuff there. They just didn't execute. Why? What was it about what you said and what you did at halftime that made it harder for you to adjust to get the ball out to the open guys in the second half? Figure that out, and then come back the next week and don't make it happen again. If they can come out and just really have a great third quarter against BC, it's going to tell me, okay, step forward. You had a rough game. You had a rough half. They out adjusted you in the second half. Your guys didn't execute. You put it behind you. You came out the next week and you got it done. And so that's a thing too. That'd be a sign for growth. So come out in the third quarter, whether you're up 3 or you're up 20, and really bury them in the third quarter. That's going to be very important for me. I want to see that because that's going to tell me if this team has grown or if this is just who they are for the rest of the year, and then you can figure out what changes you need to make in the offseason. I want to see that this coaching staff is capable of growth during the season. Big growth. They've made growth, but are they capable of big growth during the season? I want to see if they're capable of that, and this BC game is going to tell us a lot in that regard, Ryan.
I'm going to keep this really brief, Brian. I talk about this all the time. Coaches are graded based upon the adjustments that they make. And those adjustments happen from half to half. They happen from quarter to quarter. They happen drive to drive. They happen game to game. And you are coming off of a game where in the second half, your adjustments didn't work. They didn't work. It was bad. It was a poorly called game in the second half. I think we all agree. There's players that need to make plays, no doubt about it. It is a collaborative effort. But from a coaching perspective, second half adjustments did not work last week. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't. So now you're coming into this game. Good coaches are going to put that behind them, turn the page, and say the adjustments we need to make to be a better football team to start this game against Boston College is what we're going to see early on in this game. And then from the first to second half, if Notre Dame does get up big on Boston College, let's say in a hypothetical, then they need to show we learned our mistake from last game. What did we not do during halftime of the last football game that allowed Navy to get back in the game when everything was at the end? They need to now look at that and say this is a challenge to ourselves because we know we have the talents. We know that when we're on, we're a good football team. But we now need to prove our own worth as coaches to make these adjustments, put our players in proper positions, and take advantage of a team that isn't very good. At the end of the day, you are a much better, much more talented team than this Boston College team. You can't hurt yourself. You can't get out-coached on Saturday against this Boston College staff because that's the only way that this game is close, in my opinion, is that Notre Dame shoots themselves in the foot and that they get out-coached by this Boston College team. Those are the only ways that this gets close. So I think it is a big opportunity for the coaching staff to put everything behind, to move on to the next game, but to show that they can grow and they can make those adjustments, because that is ultimately how you are judged as a coach, your ability to fight that adversity and make those adjustments during a game, during a half, during a week. Those are the things that we're going to look at this game and say, it'll give us confidence if the coaches are able to take that step.
I'm going to actually disagree with one part of what you said. You said you think we can all agree on that the play calling in the second half was not good. I disagree with that. I think the play calling in the second half was good. It wasn't great. There were things they should have done that they didn't go to. But when you're getting guys open as often as the play calling was getting guys open, it's not a play calling problem for me. It gets down to an execution problem. That's still on you as a coaching staff, because you're calling plays that, yes, they're getting open, but your guys aren't executing. So I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a play calling mistake. I think the adjustments were the problem, because you weren't able to adjust in a way that your quarterback felt comfortable executing the plays that you were calling. So I think we're saying the same thing. I just would put it on a different aspect of it than more so than just the play calling. I think it was an execution problem, but at the end of the day, execution is as if I'm an offensive coordinator, when I was a receivers coach and my guys went out there and didn't play well, when I was a quarterbacks coach or a pass game coordinator and we didn't execute in that part of the game, that's still on me. I didn't do what I needed to do to prepare them to execute what I was calling. And it didn't matter if my play call was great. If they couldn't execute it, it still wasn't working. So that would just be the one little nit. The rest of what you said, I completely agree with, Ryan. I think we're on the same page. I wouldn't say it was a play calling problem. I actually think the play calling, if executed properly, they rip Navy apart. But that doesn't matter. That's a theory. You have to be able to execute it. I don't care. What do I always say, Ryan? It doesn't matter how smart I am. It matters what my kids can do. And that was the reality of what we didn't see last week. So that's the challenge for Coach Reese, is you have to figure out ways where I don't care what you're calling if your quarterback and your linemen and your tight ends and your backs and your receivers can't execute it, right? I think that's the key. So that's kind of what we're gonna focus on.